Hey guys, Jay here. As always, I'm going to offer you some recommendations and modifications for ways in which you might adapt our CrossFit linchpin workouts for kids. We're going to take a closer look at Tuesday the 8th of February. It's a heavy day. It's 5x3 back squat. Now, if you've got some teens in your house, I think heavy days are quite a nice day to actually go for it with the children. One thing I would say is that make sure that their movement is dictating the load, not the load dictating their movement. So you're really controlling. They have to earn the right to add load to the weights. They also need to have really sound mechanics before they are loading with the back squat. One thing I would say is that be mindful of that when our children are growing, they might not always appear to be squatting as well as they did one week to the next. Keep an eye on that, because where they're growing, they need to re-establish their movement patterns from a growth spurt. So it's absolutely okay to sort of strip it all off, work on just the movement again unloaded, and then build it back up when they've re-established that, so those neurological pathways for those movements. If you've got some teens out there, then by all means, have a go, but probably 5x5, maybe 5x7, and you're really incrementally loading that up. Now, on the whole, our workouts that I usually adapt are really focused for children between sort of 5 to 11, 12 years old. And the reason I do that is just some of the movement themes and the patterns and the progressions that we would use are quite similar in that age group. So that said, for our advanced kids today, we're looking at 5 rounds for quality. Now, all of our workouts should be for quality, but when we're focusing on something like a heavy day, I like to mirror that with my children and say, we're slowing down today. We're really focusing on some movement. It could be that we're focusing on improving a certain aspect of their points of performance. So it could be that their line of action isn't quite right. They're initiating with their knees and not sending their hips back first. It could be they haven't quite got their feet in the right position. It could be they're not maybe reaching depth, or their knees aren't tracking their toes, or they're not maintaining a neutral lumbar curve. Whichever it is, if I'm focusing on one of those for the day, for that workout, I'm just going to pick one to focus on. I'm almost going to selectively ignore some of the others. So whatever your child needs to focus on in terms of developing their mechanics, just pick one to focus on and selectively ignore. They won't be able to change 3 or 4 things from the cues that you give them during a workout. They just don't have the emotional maturity or the capacity to do that, the mental capacity to do that. So whenever we're working with our children, try to pick one aspect to focus on. With our advanced kids, they've shown awareness and they've shown good mechanics through those points of performance that I just mentioned, especially if we're doing a squat. And so we can load them up. And I've got 10 loaded super slow squats. So for our heavy days, I really like to slow the children down. We're really going to take the pace out of it, really focus on those mechanics today. And to load it, it could be a med ball. Now, we saw it last week with the med ball walks, holding it in front, a bit like a Zercher squat. I really like the challenge that this gives the children. In addition to it being some load, they have to really work hard on their position, keeping their chest upright, not sending their hips up before their shoulders. And my son always talks about how he feels like he's working hard to keep his posture upright whenever he does any med ball work. Alternatively, very similar to the med ball, you could do a goblet squat with a kettlebell or a dumbbell, or some dumbbell squats just in that dumbbell squat sort of front rack position. Either way, it's loaded, but it's super, super slow, really, really slow and controlled. And then working on that sort of tension, I guess almost mimicking what adults would do when they're bracing, that sort of nice tight midline, is that 10-meter roving plank there, getting the children into a nice position. Instead of doing a plank hold, I quite like to get the children doing one of those plank movements, but dynamically. It's just a bit more interesting for them. And then 5 broad jumps. Now I've got the broad jump in there because running all throughout, one of the themes that we really like in CrossFit Kids is impact loading. So that jumping and landing and the sort of response that gives our children. So I've got 5 broad jumps in there, really to hit that. For our less experienced and our no equipment option, I've chosen an AMRAP for quality. And depending on where your children are at, it's 5 to 10 super slow squats, unloaded. Again, you'll probably, with children in this group here especially, picking on one of those points of performance. And I'd say a really good starting point is if they haven't quite got their feet in the right position, that's like the building block of the squat. So go there. And then, are they able to get full range of motion? Are they able to keep their knees tracking their toes and maintain a lumbar curve? Is their line of action right? All of those things, you'd be picking one to focus on. Again, we've got that 10-meter roving plank, but in there, if you feel like you want to mix things up, you can go for any of those plank progressions, those plank games that we've looked at before. The plank 360, maybe planks with some hand taps to some objects, maybe some planks going from front support to back support and over again, just to mix it up. It's entirely up to you. And then again, for that impact loading stimulus, we've got those 5 broad jumps. Now, when we have quite a simple day where there isn't too much overloading the children in terms of the skill, I really like to have some accessory work. And again, thinking about the things that we like to have running through our CrossFit Kids workouts, such as the impact loading, stimulating the children's vestibular system is another one of those sort of key components that we like to have. So for that reason, I've got the handstand progressions in here. I have some videos for you, some different handstand progressions, depending on where your children are at, and spend sort of 5 to 10 minutes focusing on those skills. One other thing I'd like to mention is that after exercise, it's an ideal time to do some schoolwork. And the reason for that is that it's been proven, and there's research out there that suggests that after exercise, the children are in a great place to learn, but also retain information, that they find it easier to retain the information that they're taking on. We like to, every so often, just give our children some of their homework or some schoolwork to do 5 to 10 minutes after their workout, and it seems to really sort of stick in their minds, and they sort of retain it and recall it much more readily and easily than if they just did it sort of before exercise, after they come home from school and they're maybe tired or lethargic. But maybe that's something you could add into your sort of CrossFit Kids sort of timetable, if you like, in there. You've got sort of some skill work to finish off with, and then just finish off with a bit of homework there to finish off with. Might be just be some quiet reading where they're focused, or some spellings, or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But there is some great research that supports that. Have fun with this workout, guys. I'm going to have some videos for you showing the workout demo and also the handstand progressions. Again, you could put any of the progressions that we've looked at before. We could do the bar hanging progressions, all those plank progressions, especially for your younger children if they're not quite ready to get upside down.
Things I'm really looking forward to here is that Jonah's maintaining a lumbar curve, which he was. I took a look at the side while videoing this. Also, maintaining knees tracking toes and the weight not coming forward too much, especially with the ball not bringing him forwards. So here, looking for Jonah to keep his hands underneath his shoulders, maintain a straight line in the plank, and he's not sagging in his hips or piking his hips too much. The thing that I really look forward to here is the children are jumping as far as they can, but their knees track their toes as they land, much like in a squat, and it's a nice soft landing. They're not sort of landing with straight legs. And also their foot is flat when they land as well. So for our handstand progressions, our first progression will be a forward roll. The children will need a forward roll. It's the first sort of step to being upside down, but it's also a good way to bail later on. Our next step is a stink bug, a piked plank, just holding that nice position, getting used to having their weight over their hands and over their shoulders. And then they can move on to a piked handstand push-up. We're just looking to create that tripod, so the forehead aiming for the fingertips and then the head coming back through the arms. The next progression is really in here to teach the children how to kick up into a handstand. And as they get progressively better, you'll see that we gradually lower the box here for Jonah. So toe taps getting higher as their hands get lower on the box. Also, another thing we're looking for here is they don't arch too much in their midline. So our next progression would be wall walks, and you can do this simultaneously as working on the toe tap, so you can get them used to being upside down and kicking up at the same time. And we just layer it, you know, we do slightly halfway up and slightly further up, and then get the children used to having their weight over their shoulder, over their hands, and we can walk it all the way up until they're vertical. Nose is right by the wall. It's a good point to notice that if they are directly up, the best way for them to bail out of them if they do get into trouble is to be able to control a forward roll down out of it. Next progression would be linking all that together. Full kick up handstand against the wall. You'll be surprised if you systematically work through these progressions, how quickly your children will be able to do some strict handstand push-ups. And then once they've mastered the handstand and some freestanding handstands, let them move on to some handstand walks or some more fun progressions that you'll see after this video.